Welcome back to Tokenization 101. I'm Cora, and in our last episode, we explored the concept of real-world assets, the tangible building blocks of our global economy that are now being brought on-chain through blockchain technology. Today we're diving deeper by comparing two very different, but equally powerful, models of ownership and investment: traditional private equity and tokenization. At first glance, they might seem like apples and oranges. One is steeped in legacy finance and exclusive deal-making. The other is digital native, programmable, and global. But both are trying to solve the same core problem: how to fund and grow valuable projects in a way that rewards both the founders and the investors. So let's break it down, carefully, clearly, and with practical examples. Private equity, often called PE, is one of the oldest and most well-established ways to raise money for a business, especially once it's past the startup stage. In simple terms, private equity means selling part of your company to private investors, usually in large chunks, and usually behind closed doors. These investors, often wealthy individuals, family offices, or professional funds, inject capital into your company in exchange for equity. That equity gives them ownership, voting rights, and often the power to influence or control decisions at the board level. Private equity deals are structured, negotiated, and locked in. You'll go through intense due diligence. Lawyers will write thick contracts, valuations are agreed behind the scenes, and typically, the investor holds their stake for 5 to 10 years before they even consider an exit, like selling your company or going public. These are not quick flips, they're long-term partnerships, sometimes supportive, sometimes controlling. And the biggest issue? Access. You can't just join a PE round. You have to be invited, you have to qualify, and you usually have to write a very big check, often hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. This has worked well for decades, but it's also excluded billions of people and slowed innovation, especially in regions without well-developed capital markets. Now imagine you could take that same business, that same equity or revenue model, and represent it using digital tokens on a blockchain. Each token could represent a small piece of ownership, or access to future earnings, or even voting rights. You could program the rights directly into the token, automating how returns are paid out, how decisions are made, and how the rules of the ecosystem evolve. This is tokenization. And unlike private equity, tokenization doesn't require you to hand over control to a handful of investors. Instead, you can distribute the value across a much wider network of participants. Want to raise $1 million? Instead of relying on one private investor, you might issue 100,000 tokens at $10 each. These tokens could be bought by individuals from around the world, subject to your regulatory jurisdiction, of course, and each one would represent a piece of the action. You still raise your capital, but now the model is programmable, transparent, and inclusive. And here's the best part: the tokens can be liquid, tradable on platforms that comply with local laws, so people don't have to wait 10 years to see value. Let's take a moment to compare private equity and tokenization, not in theory, but across the dimensions that actually matter. First, access. Private equity is limited to accredited investors, people with very high net worth or institutional backing. Tokenization, by contrast, opens the door to broader participation. Depending on the jurisdiction and regulatory model, even everyday individuals can get involved. Next, control. In private equity, investors often negotiate for board seats or special rights. That means they can directly influence how a company is run. Tokenization allows for governance to be programmed into the system, using smart contracts. Token holders can vote, but the rules are transparent and pre-agreed. Now, liquidity. Private equity investors usually wait 5 to 10 years before seeing any return. Their money is locked up. With tokenization, liquidity becomes possible. Tokens can be bought, held, or traded, depending on compliance and the platform used. What about transparency? In private equity, reporting is limited and mostly done privately. Updates come quarterly or even less frequently. Tokenized systems are blockchain-based. Transactions, ownership, and activity are visible in real time, creating a built-in audit trail. Then there's cost. Private equity deals involve lots of lawyers, accountants, and bankers. Tokenization reduces this overhead by using automation. Smart contracts handle what used to take multiple intermediaries. Finally, global reach. Private equity deals are often region-specific or tied to networks in developed markets. Tokenization is borderless by design, allowing you to raise capital from a global audience, subject to regulations. So, when you step back, you can see the contrast clearly. Private equity is exclusive, slow-moving, and control-heavy. Tokenization is inclusive, programmable, and built for the digital economy. They each have their place. But the difference is undeniable. Let's make it practical. Say you own a cocoa processing factory in Ghana. You need $750,000 to modernize your equipment and secure contracts with European buyers. Option A, private equity. You pitch a PE firm in London. After months of back and forth, you give up 40% equity in your company. You now have a foreign board member who doesn't understand local supply chains, and you're locked into a 7-year exit strategy that doesn't align with your growth cycle. Option B, tokenization. You tokenize future production rights. Investors buy tokens that entitle them to a percentage of cocoa processed over the next 5 years. You keep control of your company. Investors earn based on volume, verified on-chain. The supply chain becomes transparent. Your funders are now aligned, not with ownership control, but with your success. And your tokens could be traded, if structured within a compliant exchange. This is not theory, this is happening right now, across agriculture, real estate, energy, and more. Of course, none of this works without compliance. Tokenized assets must still respect laws, like SEC Regulation D in the US, MiCA in the EU, and FSCA oversight in South Africa. Just because you issue tokens doesn't mean you're exempt. If your tokens represent financial return, ownership, or dividends, you are likely issuing a security, and must file and disclose accordingly. This is where tokenization platforms, legal counsel, and trusted custody partners come in. Also, tokenization has unique risks. Custody risk. Who holds the underlying asset? Smart contract failure. Bugs can break automation. Market abuse. Illiquid tokens can be manipulated. These aren't reasons to reject tokenization, but they do mean that you must build responsibly, with the right infrastructure. Interestingly, many companies are choosing a hybrid path. They raise their first $1 from private equity, then tokenize their revenue or operations to build a community, unlock liquidity, or engage users. Think of tokenization not as a replacement, but as a next-generation financial layer that can sit alongside equity. Private equity brings capital and experience. Tokenization brings reach, automation, and participation. Together, they can create something truly powerful. We're at a turning point. The old world of finance, built on closed networks, long contracts, and exclusivity, is colliding with a new one based on openness, programmability, and inclusion. Tokenization gives us tools to rethink ownership, to make it fairer, faster, and more connected. It won't solve every problem, but it can unlock new possibilities for entrepreneurs, communities, and investors around the world. In our next episode, we'll compare tokenization to venture capital, the startup world's favorite fuel source, and explore how tokens might reshape early-stage innovation. I'm Cora, and this is Tokenization 101. See you in episode 6.